Nangulba, miss.
Ulba,
Ay,
miss.
nai-present
Ulba,
on.
miss. Oy, nagkurog na mi, miss.
After ani mo subject, miss, kay mag-present miss sa talumpati.
See. So,
Magtatagalog sila.
magtatagalog kayo. All right. So, how are you feeling today? Are you excited? Are you happy? Are you a bit nervous? So, nerve-wracking moments in your lives this time? Or are you angry or agitated on something? So, whatever emotions that you have, I just want to highlight that your emotions are accepted, it should be validated. You welcome those emotions as long as you do not sin, you do not commit any sin with the emotions that you have. In our body system, we always want people to have these four happy hormones. So, how are your happy hormones? Do you have abundance of these things? So, when we say dopamine, it's the reward hormones. Our brain excretes these hormones, especially when we are being told with some affirmation, words of congratulations, or like words that we can hear, such as, "Oh, you really have had a great time today," or "Your dress is really beautiful." Or when people would tell you, "We might should kay ni si kuan, eh, pabida jud kay ni siya, excellent gid ni iyang mga work." Okay. Now, we also have some oxytocin, or what we known as the happy hormone. So what we do with the happy hormone, we have them whenever we are oxytocin rather is the love hormone. It increases in our body, especially when we feel that we are loved with the people who would give us some hug, kisses, or prepare food or spend quality time with us. Serotonin, on the other hand, is the happy hormone. So these happy hormones are important because it affects your emotions, leading you to a good, effective way that you will have to run through the day. Endorphins, on the other hand, is what we call as the willpower hormone. So the willpower hormones are the one that would encourage you, I can do this one, kaya ko to, fight, 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 laban lang. But there are tendencies that these happy hormones will not be abundant in your life, or if they are not well excreted in your brain, tendency is that you will experience lagging in your body system. You feel agitated easily, you are sad, you're depressed, you are somehow feeling the melancholy mode and the blues of your life. So how can you increase your happy hormones? So make sure that you hear affirmation of words, you chat your classmates with nice words, you build words that would bring life. Also, happy hormones are increasing if you eat something that you like, or the things that gives you pleasure. Food such as dark chocolate is one of the important happy hormone um, increaser. At the same time, we have the fruits and vegetables. It's very helpful for you guys. So make sure that you give those things to your body. And one more thing is that you give your body at least a good sleep from 6 to 8 hours and a lot of water intake. So why am I telling you this? Because aside from learning strategy on how to become a better teacher, I envision you to become my best ano, line of defense in the future. It's not only that I'm sharing to you tips, sharing to you techniques and strategies how to maneuver your classroom management later on, but at the same time, how to take care of yourself. And when can you start taking good care of yourself is right now, because the challenge, the real test, the real assessment for these happy or hormones are actually in this pandemic, in this online platform modality that we have. So, guys, increase your happy hormones at the same time. Love yourselves. You know, those people who are experiencing suicidal tendencies, depression, they did not acknowledge that their happy hormones are depleting. So, for you to check, please remember these hormones. Do you have them? Are you are you experiencing, maybe you are sad? So double check. Do something to increase your happy hormones. Now, in the line of becoming a good teacher in the future, not only for science, for math, for social studies, or being a good SPED teacher or an early childhood teacher, it's very important that we allot more or less 10,000 hours on the things that we really love to do. For example, if you want to be a pianist in the future, you need to exert at least 1 hour a day, and basically that would be um, leading you to 10 hours to be an expert on that particular skill. Now, where are you spending most of your time? Is it on Mobile Legend? Is it on eating? Is it in gardening? Or is it reading with books? So the hours where we are actually having it as our commodity, it leads us to where we will be expert at. And if you are passionately giving those time on that certain skill, new learning, new musical instrument, or even the confidence that you are building, with that span of 10 years, you'll be able to give your best in a full expert stance on that particular hours. There's a food for thought. The major barrier to skill acquisition isn't intellectual, but it's emotional, because we as a person, we are afraid to try new things. That is why when you said you are nervous, I was actually looking for people who are nervous, who are scared, especially right now. There's nothing to be scared of this time. Only COVID, no? That is very so negative. So the only thing that we don't want to have this time is the positivity in COVID-19. But needless to say, we need to make our choices appropriate for us, or the choices or the opportunities that are given to you, equipping you to become a better teacher. So you envision yourself. Is Mobile Legend helping you to become a better teacher? Is it helping you with your confidence? Is it rewiring your brain to be strategically intelligent in those different strategies and way to attack? Are you learning a lot of words? Are your Netflix binging in your watching, are they leading you to become confident in the way you enunciate with those Korean language, English language? So magnify to where you are using your time. You know, these people that I've shown to you, they've just recently won, and it's so exciting that they would be rewarded this coming December 10, 2020 in Sweden for the Alfred Nobel Peace Prize. So these two women here, they won in a category in chemistry where their study was more or less a new Caesar, molecular Caesar that they called, will be able to rewire or change the person itself. So you imagine, for example, if that generation or the genes will have a short generation or a stout generation, they have their ability to just use that molecular scissor, or they will rewire the DNA of the person so that the next generation will become smarter, more physically fit, at the same time more genuine with the ideal pattern that they really wanted for that generation to have. It's also promising because their work in the DNA is also very helpful, or I may say that it plays a significant role in the life of the agriculture. For example, if you want that tomatoes to be perfectly in a circular asymmetric form where it can really have a good kilos for you whenever you are creating juices, for example tomato sauce or for ketchup. If you want that fruit to be so large, they already knew what they will do with it, with a certain um, hormones or the DNA that they are doing. So these two people, we have Emmanuel and Jennifer, they really took time in creating this genome editing. So they knew this time how to edit, but somehow if we will avail their services, it's very expensive. Okay, going or speaking to this science inventions, discovery, we teachers would want our students to start young, especially in discovering, learning things with science. And this afternoon, we will venture on how we can somehow initiate these love for science, inventions, chemistry, discovery to our young children. So we have four great ideas where we really have to indulge our children. That is in chemistry, physics, biology, astrology, or the bodies of heavenly bodies. So, creative science deals on how we can allow young children to associate the lives and the things that they see in nature and how they're able to learn in a way that it is experiential. They're able to discover things. At the same time, they would be allowed to explore themselves in what we call as the STEAM education. So the things that I'll be sharing to you are somehow anchored this time with the STEAM education. So first, chemistry. Who among you tried playing with the curiosity of water and oil? Is it true that you cannot mix water and oil?
Yes, miss, di siya ma-mix, pero kung na siya ibutang nga kanang tatry katong sabon miss ba kay kuan mo mix mo kuan na siya. Ako ba? Basta nag-experiment man sa una.
Okay, yeah. So we actually have so many memories from our English, I mean, from my science teachers regarding experimentation, and they really um, left an imprint on us because maybe it was fun or you really had interacted with your classmates or during the collaborative work. So what we can do for young children is that we have this chemistry experiment. So first is the suspension on the oil and the water. So you just shake these mixture and eventually you will see the chemical reaction when we place this vinegar or baking soda, and eventually a lot of things will happen when we also try to put a little of bone. So this short experiment will allow you to enhance somehow why things change and how these materials, either solvent or solute, will dilute the chicken bone. We actually had this one when last year when we did some face-to-face activity, but right now we'll just try to go over with this simple chemistry experiment. Another one, who among you played before? Like if you have two magnets and there's a wood, and then you would put a coin, then the coin would start moving, or you trick someone with any of your magnetic tricks using the magnets. So physics, it's very engaging at the same time. A lot of discovery happens whenever we present with physics, such as the usage of magnets, prism, magnifying glasses, machines, the inventions of the wheel, and how we also get the formula for getting the distance or even the acceleration. So somehow these things can be also exposed with the sink and float of the objects. So for young children, they really love to check whether this item would sink and float. So they would have inferencing, they would guess those things. I actually saw some of these lessons from the assignments that you had for your project in the activity and the discussions that was given in the Google Classroom. Another one, who among you here can remember when their teachers would ask them to use the potatoes to be conductors and give light? Who among you had that experiment before?
Kami miss, nag-try rami.
Did it light?
Lemon man tamong gigamit miss.
Yes, it can also have lemon. So there's this particular chemical in the sodium that allows the materials to light up. So potato is one, and lemon. Now, we also allow ourselves to use the kind of series. Remember those time when our teachers would ask us to bring those tiny bulbs and those sockets and wires where we understand the electricity and how series worked in the different formations as long as it's connected with a positive and negative energy. We also, who among you tried playing with a balloon wherever, whenever you scratch the balloon into your head, and then eventually it will allow your hair to just follow the balloon or it would stand up. Diba? We had that one. We had these several activities in physics. When we go also to the most essential learning curriculum, students are actually exposed to some concepts on biology, such as living things and non-living things. So maybe some of you will be able to pick up this lesson for their teaching them in the future. Some also had to bring along their fish, their tadpoles. They are having some observation or they watch with the hatching of the chicken. So when I was in my kindergarten class before, I really need to ask someone to get some little cocoon of butterfly so that the children would be able to see how the butterfly would have its cycles. Then I would buy several chicks. So it's actually it's 10 pesos in carbon, so you can buy that one. And we had a little cage in our school before in the garden where my students would tie a little ribbon into the chick, and they would know that that chick is there until it would grow a little bit bigger, and they would bring it at home. And then eventually they will take good care of those chick. We also had a pet day where my students would bring along their pets such as hamster, iguana, different kinds of dogs, and imagine a class bombarded with so many animals. But these pets or these animals are actually in cage. And we also had a little aquarium. One time, I was cleaning the aquarium, and of course, you need to transport the fishes. So you imagine um, finding Nemo. That that thing happened to me. So the fish went into the sink and then it's nowhere to be found. It's like a little Nemo and then nowhere to be found. And then I don't know where to find that kind of fish. And I just confessed to the children that our little pet Louise, maybe it's already in the sewage water. So ni cry gid ako mga children adto. Mga Korean kids na ako ni cry kay wala daw na ako gibantayan ang ilang pet nga fish. Okay, anyway, there's also a tendency for us to really engage young children with the birds because you would know their behavior, who are those diligent in feeding the fish. My kids are always excited when it's their assignment to, okay, it's your turn, for example, um, Thea, it's your turn tomorrow to feed the fish. So, ma-excited sila sayo kay sila mo go to school and they would have a lot of questions regarding those things. So, I will also tell you how to do it, the art of questioning. Animals and their habitats are also part of the lessons. Now, how do we take good care of the fish? Or how do we take good care of the pets? Are some of the essential things that our children should know. Another lesson on biology includes our five senses. That is why we have those head, shoulders, knees, and toes. And then we would explore with a lot of things. Smelling of jar, taste test, food test. So we actually had this one. This is supposed to be fun because I brought along several foods last year. And then the students are blindfolded and they need to guess that particular food. And we also had a smell test, like you need to guess those different kinds of coffee, food, powder, paprika, and even some cinnamon powder. And you need to guess. You know, my cousin works in Starbucks, and the first test in Starbucks is that you need to identify the 72 ingredients blindfolded. So that's part of their test aside from the um, assessment test in intelligence. So grabe no, your nose should have a good olfactory nerves and the senses that you have should be activated kumbaga. 'Di ba, Jason? Now,
Yeah.
um there's even an old adage that whenever you smell someone, it's actually directly proportional to your brain. That's why whenever you associate a particular scent or smell of that someone, it activates the hormones also in the brain, especially in the pleasure or in the happy hormone part because they are somehow connected. That is why if you happen to remember mo na siya ang scent sa imuhang ex before, maglagot ka kung mo na imuhang masimhutan, or like the scent of food, the smell of food, it activates you on association for um, hunger mode, or you really want to devour a good meal. Now, we also have to explore with young children with botany. So, ano na mo karma pa mga plant tita with the germination. Remember those times when we need to bring all kinds of flowers that we have in our house, especially gomamela, and we need to dissect the gomamela, finding the pistil, the female part, ovula, the petals, sepals, and all. And even I've learned from my science class that bougainvillea, the colors of the bougainvillea, like, diba, you see those yellow, red, purple, it's actually leaf. But the little small flower of a bougainvillea, it's the only flower itself. Have you seen that one? Ang kanang mga colorful nga colors sa bougainvillea, dili na siya mao ang flower gyud. It's just leaves. So you imagine, ang pinaka-flower niya kay katong gamay jud kay nga makita nimo ini kaduol nimo sa bougainvillea. Next, photosynthesis. So we know that there are three things that the plants need: the sunlight, the water, and the air for the photosynthesis and to be able to really grow in itself. But how about we place them inside our household? So some plants are indoor plants. That is why you also need to water them time to time. And not all plants requires to drink a lot of water. Mona, if too much sad mo pagwater ang plants, mga matay sila. Because there are different ways to water the plant. So not the same amount because of the herbaceous glands that they have. So the kind of glands that is within that plant. So mga plantita din ha, exchange siya tag tanom be. Okay. The importance of trees are very relevant, especially when you teach them right now nga sigig ulan. We have some friends na they are really experiencing some floods. So among you here from this class who are experiencing some floods in their area, do we have someone from Mandaue? Naa ba? Okay, maybe you can chat in there. We also remember those times when we need to experiment with some celery stalks and how they transport some colors to that stalk. Astrology is also one of my favorite subject in science where we have to study those different kinds of the formation of the stars. Remember those things? Or even you need to discover from the different forms of planets in the solar system. We also explored with some playing of the shadows, experiencing the eclipse and the different that rotation and revolution. The moon shape, the waxing gibbous, the new moon and the full moon. Water cycle, the explanation and the illustration also makes us learn more and appreciate why water or water vapor had to be had to undergo these different cycles. Whether we place our experiments in a jar or even understanding those seasons are very helpful for our children. We also need to tackle in our learning curriculum content issues such as erosion, the worms in the soil, and recycling and climate change. So how can these concepts be learned? Of course, we learn through the different senses that we have. So we expose our children. First-hand experiences are very important. Now, how about the children that we have in schools right now? Why do we have an increased number for suicidal tendencies? Because some concepts, remember, a lot of strategies that we have, parents didn't know how to deal with certain strategies. All they have to do is just to, sige, ansirin na imong module, then the child will just read the module even if they cannot understand concepts. That is why they would think and depletion of their hormones leading them to inappropriate thinking. Ay, maghikog na lang oy kay kapoy bianing module wala may motabang nako, wala may mo explain nako. So I have a confession that in our place last Sunday someone committed suicide, and it's actually uh, sorrowful to admit that it's another issue on modules. I live here in Inayaga, Naga, and It's so heartbreaking that the family had to go through with that. So the child was not able to ask for some help or no one was able to rescue. So wala man ko kailan niya, wala jud siya naka wala ko siya naambitan sa ako ang grasya. So he actually lives somewhere far from our place, but in here in Inayagan. Next is we have simple experiments as well. So we allow kids to explore things. We allow them to venture on these experiments. But it's not every day. It's not every day that you'd be experimenting because sometimes it's expensive. It's tasky because you need to prepare the materials. And planned discoveries are helpful whenever your kids would bring something in your class and they would tell you about these things. And make sure that your discussion will be very exciting so you allow them to be thinkers creatively. So what are those scientific process? So in science, we fall on these things. We observe. We allow them to take notice using the different senses that they have. Allow them to ask questions. A lot of questions is very important. Next one, we create hypothesis and inferencing for this questions that they have. Allow them to predict. Allow them to share their thoughts on what will happen. And then you perform the experiments. We also analyze, we need to validate the results, and we need to make our own hypothesis. So we actually experienced this one when we were in high school or even in our elementary years. So again, observe, notice some differences and likeness, solving problems, collecting specimens, collecting some data, and somehow we gain information with the books, from websites, and even asking for the interviews of other people. What should be the characteristics of a science teacher? So for instance, if you'll be a science teacher, what will you do? So what will you do, guys? So these are the things that you actually have again. So you are actually a facilitator. So as a teacher, it's very important that you facilitate things, and in facilitating, we are not the sole giver of the information, but we are just part of the many resources. Remember? We allow also to expand vocabulary. So we have this strategy: make connections, acknowledge the ideas of your students, open-ended questions, follow up, document. We need to gather data at the same time store them properly. So how to ask questions? So we have those things. I will explain it further in the art of questioning. So these are the art of questioning. So the art of questioning, it actually is a part of your 10,000 rule uh, practice. So it's not over time that you are so good in the art of questioning, but you can practice somehow this time. So first is we use divergent or open-ended questions. So open-ended questions, the use of what will happen, how, why, rather than giving out the short answers or the short-sighted answers or the obvious answers. So you really allow your students to think. For example, what do you think? What should we try? Or what would happen? What went wrong in this experiment? So you allow them to have this open-ended questions or divergent questions. Next one, try to avoid convergent or those with ended questions. For example, what color is this? Very obvious, no? What's the name of this? Very common case here. But we can actually start on that level. Recall, remember. But then you really need to escalate your art of questioning. But for special education, it's also difficult. Okay, what if what is the color? Wrong na gani ang child. So you really need to know your students. Next one, we offer question starters. So there will be prompting. So how many ways can you, and then you give, there's a 5-second rule for that answering of the question. So haven't you noticed when I ask you question, I would call person, or I would somehow give a prompt. For example, okay, anyone wants to share their thoughts? So mo count pa ka nag 5 seconds. You can say willing because it's still processing, and then you tell that person, okay, please prepare. For For example, Maria, you'll be next to answer. So sometimes people needs to be prod, needs to be somehow heads up, kumbaga. Another one is take advantage in the opportunity when you ask the question. It can be when something happens on the floor. So this is an informal way of when can you ask the question to your child. So for instance, in your little children, if you have it in your house, you allow them to be inquisitive. You ask a lot of questions. You start. You you question yourself if you know how to do the art of questioning. Sige, start ko na ninyo guys because as a teacher, we need to have this skill. It's a skill that will be building up time to time the art of questioning, especially also that you will be doing your teaching demo. It's not always that you have those cue cards with you. So art of questioning should be automatic when you give some possibilities of some clarification. Next one, accept every answer equally. So sometimes the answer may be wrong. You can actually paraphrase it or you validate. For example, yes, Ninya, is this what you're trying to say? So you need to validate or you need to recall or rephrase the answer of that student if sakto ba imuhang gipasabot. Next is we encourage children to elaborate their ideas. Encourage them to be confident even if it's an expression of Bisaya or Tagalog or English nga magkanga. Encourage them and then you tell them, can you tell me more about it? What else? Is there something else who wants to add with this idea? So kana lang yun nga mga linya inyong i-remember. 'Di ba? It would lead you to uh, different answers or this is like the in call center pa mon mga spills nimong buhaton. What else can you tell me about with this idea? Okay, what do you think will happen next? So I use this strategy especially if I do not know the answer, especially for young children. They are very inquisitive. Sometimes they have out of this world answer. So I don't acknowledge yet that I don't know the answer, but I would give back the question. For example, teacher, don't you know that I just want to clarify if dinosaurs are real? So, oh, that's a very interesting question. Did you read something about it? Would you like to share it to me? So, di ba, maski wala ka kabaw sa answer, o ang bata na mo share. Sana you go back, you throw back to the student or to the child. Okay, but if you know the answer, of course, you're very free to explain. Documents children's answers by publishing it on the board imong a record, or maybe if here online teacher would allow you to chat or you would allow to really show you answers or even allow you to speak. So make sure that you acknowledge the answers even if tuyok-tuyok ang answer, i-acknowledge nimo. So record their thoughts. So again, use divergent or open-ended questions. We avoid those convergent or short-sighted answers or mga obvious answers. We offer question starters or prompting. Take advantage of the opportunities to question, especially this happens snack time, cleaning time, one-on-one time period with the student. Next, accept every answer equally. So even if walang katuturan ang answer, just acknowledge it, validate. Encourage also the child to elaborate their ideas by providing the art of questioning. What will happen? How about this? Imagine if this thing happened. And document children's answer by publishing it. So the implications of the teacher for us in the future, we learn along with the kids. We may need some money to buy some materials, especially there are a lot of experiments in science, and some of these materials are not available for us in the classroom. So we really need to shell out or allow your students to bring these materials. Diffuse fear of science. Maybe some of us Filipinos are really intelligent on exploring, experimenting, but we do have a lot of fear in ourselves. Remember, the only barrier to our skill is not intelligence, but the emotion. Emotions of fear, emotions of rejection, emotions to fail. So, discover those things. Get out from your shell and discover. Be able to say, I don't know. So, it's okay to say, I don't know, or it's okay to be not okay. It's okay to acknowledge that no one is a monopoly of all those knowledge that you have. Decide also what activities is worthwhile. Okay, now going back to how you become a more creative and best facilitator in science, there are actually ways on how to achieve it. One of which is to make a good lesson plan. So first, we need to identify the learning objectives. What are those specific learning activities that we have? How can we assess the student in your activity? What are those sequence that you will be doing in your lesson? How realistic it is in your timeline for 30 to 40 minutes, and how can you close your lesson. So with the activity that I had given to you last time, it was actually in this chunk, di ba? Introductory, discussion activity, application, enrichment activities. Actually, wala pa to siya na human. Because I want to highlight you that in lesson plan, no one really had, I don't know if in the other submissions, some of you might added already the objectives. So actually, I created a trick on you because in creating something, you really need to know what is your goal. Remember, it's very biblical. No vision. If people has no vision, it will perish. You just jump into your activity. Unsa day inyong gusto i-achieve? Wala lagi mo nagbutang og objectives. Miss, wala man ka nagsuwat og objectives. Remember, I already showed to you on how to create a good lesson plan. Even in the Prof Ed 5, you had this one. You should set first objectives. So, wala jud nangita jud ko wala jud nagbutang og objectives ang mga tao ngano man ni. So, but it's not your fault, but it's actually a trick for you to discover that in your lesson plan, it's a no-no to not put objectives. Okay? So going back, the thing that you had, the introductory, discussion, application, enrichment activities, are in this chunk only, in the third part. Some of you presented some evaluation. Good thing, some also included assignments. So in your lesson planning, it actually needs to undergo with these processes. Some lesson plans, they have different terminologies like 4 A's or 3 I's, or we have the 5 E's. So it's okay. But then, the details is actually these 5 things. Balik-balik lang na siya, pero maura jud ni siya nga itsuraa sa lesson plan. Lahi lang mga pangalan. Objectives, subject matter, that includes your topic, your lesson, or your concentration or focus, materials that you will use. Procedure includes those icebreaker, preliminaries, and the lesson proper. How are you going to introduce the lesson? How are you going to evaluate or assess the student? Okay. So, parts of the lesson. Number one, objectives. It's very important that we know how to do the objectives. Later on, we will visit Bloom's taxonomy's objectives. Next, we also need to make sure that our objectives are on verbs that are observable, measurable, and time-bound, meaning they are SMART objectives. Second, it's very important that you have motivation. It can either be a prior knowledge connecting to what you have in the previous discussion and then you jump into a new lesson. But usually when you do your teaching demo, you just present on the lesson that was given to you. Next, presentation. Do you have some Are you going to show some video to the students? Are you going to present new materials such as different kinds of animals, living things and non-living things? Are you going to give some flowers or pictures or puzzles to your students? So it depends to your presentation and discussion. Then eventually, after those introductory parts on your discussion, how are the students going to practice the things that they've learned? So evaluation somehow in here is like a form of play or group work. So mana na yung mga board work or like um, go to the board and match the correct picture. If this is living thing, it will go to this part. If this is a non-living thing, it will go to the left area. So exercises or practice activity before they can have their assessment or evaluation nga one-on-one. So the assessment or the evaluation, it can be on paper because it's individual activity. And then you bring along with the assignments or the homework or the takeaway. So parts of the lesson plan, objectives, the warm up and the motivation, presentation discussion, practice, enrichment activities, assessment, assignment. At the same time, you give your students those evaluation. Now, in writing an assignment, it's very important that we go back to our objectives. We follow the Bloom's taxonomy. He said that for us now to give an effective lesson plan, we start with the lower order thinking scale. So that is the remember. So in remember, we allow students to recall facts, but in your art of questioning, that you need to escalate from lower order thinking skills to the HOTS, higher order thinking skills. And we don't just stop in the short-sighted answers, right? Kaya mga obvious answers. So remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. And in the end, we want our students to produce something. We want them to apply what they have learned in our discussion. Like for you guys, what do you think is our create in our teaching science and math class? What is your create activity? Okay, anyone? So it's actually yes,
Kanang gibuhat na to, Miss.
yes.
Imong gipabuhat na mo.
Lesson
Katong
plan,
kuan, Miss.
Correct. So actually your teachers right now, whenever they are in the college, you look for the teacher who are allowing you to create something, to invent something, or to design something because they're actually in this part already, the create. That is the highest form or evaluation of your assessment. If students are asking you to somehow apply, recall, so na mo diri lower order thinking skills. But as a teacher, we want our students to create something to evaluate. So that is why you are on this part. Okay? Now, you can actually search a lot of these um, verbs, action verbs of Bloom's taxonomy. So in here, as you can see on my chart, we have a lot of activities that we can associate. Miss, what is said some of these words kay moadto sa create? It depends to your construction of your objectives. So pwede, for example, recall activities, chu and organize. So somehow that even if you placed organized there, that is still part on the knowledge area. So magdepend ang imuhang construction sa imong objectives. It doesn't mean that you may use these terms, but make sure that it is an activity that would really fall to the knowledge part, understanding, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. That is why when you create your lesson plan, naa-jud ni silang mga words mo na ipangitaon sa inyong mga teachers, to the one who will evaluate your lesson plan. And then, when I check your activities, asa man ang lesson plan? Asa man gi-apply si Bloom's taxonomy? Wala man. But it's okay. Now, in those Bloom's taxonomy, don't you know that it is also anchored to a different online applications? So there are actually a lot. So let's check. In remember part, as you can see here, we have the remember, diba? I want you to remember the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy. So we have remember, understand, apply, analyze, and evaluate. So he wanted us to remember always that this should be like the process. Kumbaga, we will expose our students with these pattern. So for instance, if you want your students to remember something, you can use that one. You can have some verb like match, network, repeat, visualize, recite, find. Activities such as flashcard, introduction, recitation. And these are the tools, online tools available so that you can achieve your remember activities. Next, we have the understand part. So in the understand part, there are also action verbs. See, classify, categorize, differentiate, and what are those activities that you can associate? So actually, this is like if you take a picture of this pedagogical wheel and tools, it's actually a blueprint for you. Diba? A blueprint for whenever you build a house, it's very important. You can not just saying mao ni akong house, but you have no idea, you have no compass, kumbaga. So in teaching demonstration, this is your compass. Like there's already the Bloom's taxonomy, as you can see here clearly. And then we also have some verbs. What are those activities? The activities here includes or somehow these are the teaching strategies that you will have. And then you have the tools in here, different tools that you can navigate, different tools that you can hover in your teaching and learning processes. We actually have several science websites that we can enjoy so that our science activity will be more fun. So Brain Pop, Frank Potter Science Gems, Hands on Plastics, helping your child learn science, High School Science Resource Center, Inquiry-Based Science. Then another set of websites. Okay, now this time for your lesson plan, our midterm, I will not give you a midterm activity that is multiple choice. Your midterm is actually your lesson plan, provided that you need to go back to your parts of your lesson plan. Diba? You don't have objectives. You don't even have some tools. So what I am doing here is that there's also a metacognition. So I will send another link of the revised form that you have in your lesson plan. So remember, this is already your midterm output at the same time your midterm score. So the ones that you had given to me today is your midterm project. The ones that you'll be submitting with the objectives, with the correct lesson flow. At the same time, if you have online tools, that will be your midterm examination. You work with your partner. Ask your partner, collaborate with it. So in the midterm examination, there are two submissions: the lesson plan and the metacognitive log that I will send to you. So you will have some questions. For example, what went wrong to your lesson plan? What were those improvements and discovery that you had? So that is why you work along with a partner in your lesson plan. Any questions so far before I would dismiss you? Did you learn something today? Okay, guys, are you still there?
Yes, miss.
Yes. Okay. Question. Is the lesson plan that you submitted individual?
Yes, Miss. Individual, Miss.
Okay, sige. Individual lang. So that individual grades man day ni. The grouping was actually in the social studies di ay. So individual, continue it individually. So remember, your lesson plan submission for this midterm is your midterm output first, and the new one is your midterm grade, final grade. Okay? Open for discussion and some point of